So now that the skin is clean and ready to be applied, we're going to go ahead in with our darker tone. Now I've mixed a lot of different tones in here to create a fairly natural blend for Maxim. He has somewhat darker hair, but remember I was talking about those ginger tones. I actually really like when there's a fair amount of ginger tone to the hair. So I'm going to start with darker here, and you'll notice there's sort of a graduation of color. So we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. And you're kind of like shingling the layers in here. Now it's going to be a bit darker on the bottom and then get a little bit lighter as we go up. In the corners around the mouth is going to be a little bit more of a gingery tone because that's typically where the ginger tones tend to come in. And it's also going to get a little bit curlier as we go up as well. So starting darker is going to give more depth to the look as well, as opposed to going in all with one color, which you certainly can do if that's what you have available. But building in from darker on the bottom, a medium tone in the center, and lighter on top, but blending them all throughout is going to give you a very 3D appearance and give you a more natural and believable feel to it. So starting with the darker color, we're only taking a little bit at a time. Now that we have our hair prepped and ready to go, what I have prepped in 2 separate cups here, I have 99% alcohol in one and Prozaid ready in the other. Now the alcohol is going to be used for cleaning our brush off. We're going to use a brush to apply this adhesive, but you can certainly use Q-tips if you don't have a brush available to you. I like a brush because it's easier to work with and it's a bigger surface. Using a Q-tip also, you can get the cotton stuck in there and then it gives you a texture that you don't want. So I would say using a brush with the adhesive is better. But because we're using a brush, the adhesive can get really gummy and stuck in the brush if you're not cleaning it off in between with alcohol. So think of this as like when you're working in watercolor, how you have the water to clear it. This alcohol is going to be used to clear the adhesive from the brush. So the first thing we're going to do is take a piece of our hair. Now it's always better to start with a longer piece versus a shorter piece because it doesn't matter the length when we're applying it. We're going to apply it longer and then we're going to trim it to exactly how we want it. So unless you know you need something very, very short, it's better to start longer because you can pull it and you can give it a more natural appearance versus taking something that's very tiny and trying to style from there. You just have more control over it. So taking a tiny little bit, and we're working in small sections at a time, what you want to do is hold it at the top. And you want to make sure that you have a trash can underneath you because you will be doing a lot of trimming and cutting, so having a clear area or somewhere that you know you're able to clear out of is great. And these aren't any fancy hair scissors. Remember, this isn't real human hair that we're using, so you don't need something that's not going to damage the follicle of it, but some sort of shear that works really well. I think I got these for $3 at the beauty store, so nothing too fancy here, but better than craft scissors. So you want to hold this flat, and then what you're going to do is actually cut a straight angle. Now you want to keep this as a straight edge as much as possible. When you think about hair on the face, if you look closely at hair, it grows straight out of the face. It might curve down or so, but you want this straight angle to be adhered to the face so that way it looks like it's coming directly out of the face and it's not laying flat on the skin. So once you have this flat area, what you're going to do is take a bit of Prozaid or spirit gum if you're using spirit gum on your brush. Tilt your head back a little bit for me. You're going to paint an area that you're going to apply to, and remember we're working from the bottom up here. So paint a thin layer in, and you want to wait a moment and let that get tacky before you apply this in. You can relax your neck down for a moment. While they're waiting for it to dry, make sure that they relax their neck, things like that. Again, just keep in mind the comfort of your actor while you're doing these sorts of things. That way they're not stuck in a position and having neck pain later. Put your head back. You can feel, and you see how my finger is sticking to there and lifting the skin off? You know it's tacky and it's ready to go. It's kind of giving a stringy feeling to it, and the spirit gum will do the same thing. If you're using the spirit gum, you apply it the same exact way, and then you wait a bit and let it get tacky before you apply the product or the hair. If you apply it before it's tacky, it's not going to adhere properly, and you're going to spend a lot of time, and it's going to get really messy trying to fix it. So once you have the tackiness ready, what you want to do is sort of fan this hair out That way it's not in a big clump. And then you're going to lightly press into the adhesive. Now the precision of the bottom, of course, is important, but you want to spend the majority of the time laying this beard at the top part because that's where you're going to see the most of it. Think of this bottom part as your foundation. You're building this foundation up to get a really nice full appearance. So you can see here, it's pretty stuck in there. Now, what I like to do after it's stuck in there is I like to take my hair comb and just lightly pull down. And you'll see it's going to pull a good amount off of there, but we're going to reuse this hair. We're going to take this, take our scissors, get a really clean edge, and then re-adhere in the same area where that glue is still tacky. Now you don't have to do the comb through. I like the comb through if you're trying to go for an extremely natural look and trying to get something that's really close up. But you can certainly leave it in the cluster like this and then later go back and style it. It's all going to be about personal preference. Take the time to try the different styles out, see what you like, see how it works for you before you move on to the next step. So now, we're going to do a little bit more of the Pros-Aid here. While that's drying, I'm going to clean the brush off and a little bit of alcohol. Keep it nice and clear. And then we're going to take our next piece of hair. You'll see too, you can blend a bit more. If you look at the piece and you feel like there's some pockets of striping that you don't like, you can just keep on blending that until you get it to where you want. Take the edge, cut it off. Fan it out a little bit. Test it. It's nice and tacky. And then you just lightly press in. Same exact thing. We're gonna get our next little piece ready. And you'll see it's like shingles. You're just really kind of tiling it through, and then slowly we're gonna build everything up from there. Get some more of your Pros-Aid. Put your chin a bit. Clean your brush in between. Now, one thing to note also, when you're doing this, when you're doing the trimmings like this, you don't have to throw away this top part that you're cutting off. You can save this, especially if you're doing sideburns or if you're doing a mustache, things like that. You can save it. So you can take it and instead of throwing it away, you can clip it over the table. That way you kind of have a discard pile and you have a little bit extra clipping to use should you need it for something else. So keep that in mind too. If you're short on product, you might need to use that for something a little bit later on. Even eyebrows for shorter pieces too you can do. So you don't always have to just clip it right into the trash. You can save it and be economical with your product. And you'll be able to see too, when you're pressing this into the skin, you'll be able to see if it's adhered. We lost our little cover here, so we'll just tuck this back in. Sometimes if there's a loose piece, you can just grab it, make it a little bit smaller. It's always better to work in smaller pieces versus bigger pieces. Make them feel too. Still have a little bit of tack from the Prozade over there, which is great. So we can just stick this right in there. Because they aren't all the same length and it's not all one piece, they do want to fall, they do want to pull out, and that's okay. Just pull out the excess, that way what's stuck in there is stuck in there, and then keep working with what you have. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, working with what's already there versus what else you have. And make sure too, if there are any pieces like that that look like they're really big and stuck together, just kind of pull them apart a little bit. That way, again, you just don't want it to look like there's any striping or anything like that to it. Same thing again. We're going to get a little bit of the Prozade. When you're putting glue around the hair into the next area, make sure you hold the other hair out of the way. That way you don't get too much of the hair actually in the glue. The only hair you want in the glue is what you're putting in there. You don't want to brush this into flat onto the skin because that won't look like a natural beard. And it's really just kind of crisscrossing and tiling and just building this facial hair up. And giving a good background for us to work on. Now, depending on the character, certainly the style of beard will be different. Maybe you're just doing a goatee, maybe you're just doing sort of a chin strap idea, but when you're doing the full beard, always start on the back here and build your way forward. Put a little bit more Prozade down. See, it's a very repetitive process. It's gluing and waiting, clipping and sticking, and gluing and waiting and clipping and sticking in there. It does take a good amount of patience to do this. And don't press too hard either. It really doesn't take a lot. This hair is very light and the adhesive is fairly strong, so you don't need to really jam it in there. It's just a tiny little tap. It should be barely touching the skin to let it adhere in. And you'll see too, some of them I'm doing this way, some of them I'm doing that way. Vertical, horizontal, side by side. Just slightly build it up because then it kind of crisscrosses and gives this, again, imperfect appearance to it, which makes more sense for something that's growing out of the hair as opposed to going directly straight, only horizontal all the way up, because then it looks like a line that you're creating, as opposed to blending different things, going in different directions. And don't use too much of the adhesive either. Again, just a tiny little bit, after turn back a little, is all that you really need to get this effect. And if you're using spirit gum especially too, really do a little goes a long way. Spirit gum, the more you layer it, it actually tends to kind of calcify on the skin, and it turns into this kind of crusty appearance. So use a tiny little bit. It's really all you need. Same with the Prozade too. Again, it's a very strong adhesive, and the material we're adhering this crepe wool is very, very light, so you really don't need to use a lot. Also, using more is actually going to hurt the wear time of the product, so use less. If you've ever heard the term less is more, it definitely comes in handy with adhesives. A little bit. Now say you're doing a very long, like a wizard beard, and you need it to be really, really long. That's when you would want to take the entire strand, like I showed you when you get the crepe wool, how it can just expand long. That's when you would want to take the whole thing and adhere it up there. Now that you would need a little bit more glue for, because it's going to have a bit more weight that it's holding on, but still don't go overboard with it. Keep it really long, and then you can just trim it up from there. I'm not going to make his beard too long. I think I kind of want to give him more of like a hipster appearance. So we're just going to be building this up. And then taming it as we go. So you notice we start along the bottom and we work all the way up to the jawline. I'm going to do the whole under the jawline first, and then we're going to raise above the jawline and continue up from there. I like to do around the mouth for kind of the last part. I will do little bits, but especially up under here, under the lip and stuff, that's kind of where it gets the most itchy. So I like to do that area as the last part. That way their mouth is more free, they're able to move, they're able to drink things and talk without feeling hindered by this beard. Back a little bit. Don't forget to check to make sure your adhesive is tacky before you stick this in there. You'll see how you can see a variation of tone also. There's some darkers in the middle, some lighter on the outside. Remember, we're blending different tones because we don't want it to be one flat color. I'll start to tile up a little bit onto the jawline here. Make sure you're paying attention to these tiny little hairs that stick up. Again, you don't want to be gluing them flat onto the face because that won't make sense. Make sure you keep your hands as clean as you can. Working with the adhesives and this glue it's inevitable that they're going to stick to your fingers and things like that, but try to keep them as clear as possible. That way you don't have adhesive all over your fingers because then it starts sticking to the hair and peeling everywhere. You'll notice the tiny little patches of glue I'm doing. I'm not painting an entire area because we're not working in an entire area. So just put the glue where you're meant to be working. And that also gives you more control over where the hair is going. And also, it makes you use less glue at the end of the day. You're not layering glue on top of layers of glue where you've already done it. And you'll see too, I'm kind of piecing them together a little bit while glues are drying and you're working up to the next step. You can kind of blend the different patches together because you don't want it to look like stripes that you've been putting down on the face. You want it to look like it's going to be one cohesive piece. So just manipulating the hair in between these steps is going to help in the styling later. Just kind of press the layers together and the stripes together, that way they blend a bit better. And if you have shorter pieces, if say your pieces that you made are varying lengths, you can put the shorter pieces towards the top because it's all going to be styled anyways. And think of hair, it's almost like cutting layers into it. It'll be shorter at the top to give a little bit more of a fullness to it. So if you have longer layers, use them in the bottom part building up, and the shorter ones you can put on the top to fill in or in the middle just to give a little bit more weight to it. This way for me. You don't want to take this all the way back into the hairline. Think of how a beard grows. A beard does not grow all the way back by the ears. You can actually see naturally the hairline here on him. There's a little bit of a cast. Follow that hairline. It grows with the hair itself. It doesn't go into the ears. So make sure you're not bringing it all the way back, unless of course it's a creature makeup, say it's a werewolf or something like that, then of course put the hair wherever. But for a natural beard, just kind of keep it down in this sort of sideburn idea and keep it along the jawline as opposed to going into the ear or onto this area of the neck. And think of all the different characters you can do with a beard or facial hair, aside from making someone look like they're older or giving the appearance of time passing. For example, you may be working on a play or on a TV show that one day the character is 15 and then the next day they're 45. So through the magic of makeup, you know, you can add some hair, you can add some coloring, and there are different techniques you can use to make them look as if they've aged 30 years in a 24-hour time span. So aside from things like that, you could do a werewolf. You know, you could do many different characters that just have a lot of hair to them. You can also pull into play different cultural costumes as well. You know, if they're playing a character that comes from a part of the world that traditionally has a lot of facial hair, you can really add that facial hair in to make them look like they're more ethnically appropriately, or make them look like they're more ethnically appropriate for the character that they're playing. Things like that. So there are many different realms that you can use this beard application for that aren't just set in aging or time passing or changing class. You can do a changing class also, which is fun, an easy way to, you know, make it look like someone's been outside for a long time, or, you know, maybe they're playing a homeless character or someone who has been kind of down in the dumps or in the hospital for a long time. You can use hair to do that as well. You know, a lot of times you'll see hair as a good indicator of a big change in someone's life, especially if the character has a very clean-cut look to them. Adding a beard and things like that can really change the full appearance of the character, and it really gives a strong visual to the audience that there's been a change in them. So use it to your advantage, and always, as with anything, it'll be decided on with production that you're working with, if they want a beard, if they want a mustache, or what it may be. So you're always going to have input on these things, but then it's up to you to execute the look. Once you start getting onto the top of the face too, you want to be more aware of the direction of the hair growth. So you can see specifically over here, you can see the hair grows from here down. It's not going from here out. It's not going from here in. It's growing down. So the direction you actually apply the hair is going to be straight up so that it looks like it's growing downwards. Same for other parts of the face too. Now, the under part, again, we're just kind of building depth in here, so we kind of crisscrossed, we went horizontal, we went vertical, just to give different direction underneath here, to give it some volume and to give it some weight. But now as we're moving upwards, we're going to keep in mind the direction that the hair is going to be growing in the face. So again, from here down, from here it kind of goes this way a bit. The mustache is a bit different if you're doing a hand-laid mustache, because you'll see this side tends to grow that way and this side tends to grow that way. So look at hair direction, study photos of hair growth on the face to get an idea of where it's going to go, and then hold the hair in that direction so it appears that it's growing out of the face in that way, as opposed to just doing straight, straight, straight. Doesn't really make much sense. If you get a bit of glue on your fingers and it starts to feel tacky, or you start feeling like you're getting stuck in the hair, just take a little bit of 99% alcohol and just rub it on there to remove the adhesive before you keep going, to keep it cleaner. You can also have a little bit of powder on hand that you can just dip your fingers into and rub around. That way it just kind of controls the tackiness and tones it down for you, so you're able to keep working. But I would say just take a little pause and get a little bit of the 99% alcohol, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to clean my fingers off real quick. That way I don't have so much of the tackiness stuck to them. And then keep going from there. You may think that this is very tedious, that I'm doing the tiniest little piece at a time, but I promise it's necessary to get a very natural appearance out of it. So like I said, just be patient with it. don't rush through this. If you rush through it, you're not going to get the look that you want out of it, and it's going to look very obviously fake. Now again, a lace beard is always going to look more natural than what a hand-laid one will. So keep that in mind. You know, a hand-laid beard, like I said, can be appropriate for film and TV, but it's not always the most appropriate for when you're doing something extremely close up or something that's meant to be worn for a long time in a row. The lace piece would be better, but for theatrical works and for anything Halloween, stuff like that, the hand lay is the perfect technique for you to use in that. And you can combine the two also. Like, I do like with a lace piece, even if you're doing a lace beard, I do like to hand lay a little bit on top of that lace, just at the very top to help blend it a bit more. It kind of helps to hide the lace piece a little bit, so you can share the tones also, you know, it doesn't always have to be one style. You can use multiple styles to achieve the look that you want and to get the desired result. So don't always think that it has to be set in stone of only doing it only hand lay or only lace front. You can combine the different techniques. You can also, in a quick pinch, you can use hair tone colored paint to really lightly paint in a slight effect. Now, this is going to be very dependent on what you're doing and how close it needs to be seen. So, for example, I was working on a production once where the guy had a beard, but the director wanted him to have a mustache. And this was last minute on the fly. I didn't have any fake hair with me because there was not supposed to be any fake hair in the show. Now, I should have had some on me as a backup, which is a good thing to remember for the future, is that you should always just have something with you as a backup, just in case. That way you're able to achieve it. But you have to think on the fly. So what I decided to do, this character was not meant to be seen extraordinarily close up. And it was a comedy, so this worked for it in general. But what I ended up doing was taking about 5 different colors of paint and really lightly painting in just a tiny little mustache for him. So things like that, you can think on the fly, think of what you have, and it gave the effect, and it tricked them. The director was very happy with the outcome. So you can use stuff like that if you don't have the actual hair in play, but just know that paint is kind of a last resort, I would say, if you're trying to achieve a fake beard, but it'll get the point across, especially if you're doing it in a comedic way. Again, this is a quite lengthy process, and depending on how quickly you need it done by, you may actually need an assistant to help you with it. Once you get more familiar with the method, you can certainly speed it up a bit, but at the end of the day, you do have to kind of take your time with it to really get the precision you want. So you can go as fast as you can, but sometimes by yourself isn't always fast enough. So having someone else available to help you is going to be wonderful. Now, I talked about how heat will affect the adhesive, but also it's important to note that cold will also affect the adhesive. I was working on a project once. It was a commercial for a homeless shelter. So I did this really beautiful full beard on this actor, and it was freezing outside. This was in New England in January, which is about the worst month to ever be in New England. And it was so cold outside and we were shooting everything outside, and the adhesive actually started to freeze on his face. So we had to do kind of mandatory breaks of him coming into the trailer to warm up. And there was a lot of touch-up involved in that too, because of that cold affecting the adhesive. It just kind of froze, and then nothing wanted to stay on. It became a strange kind of icicle adhesive onto the face. So I had to hit the face with a little bit of a hairdryer, kind of warm it up a bit more. So just be aware of things like that, that the elements definitely will affect this makeup. So be available for touch-ups, have some extra glue, have some extra hair on hand. That way if a piece of it falls, or, you know, one thing too, actors will want to play with this when it's on, especially if they've never had a beard. They want to stroke the beard. They really get into character with facial hair. So make sure to let them know that it's not really the best to be pulling on this. The facial hair will pull off fairly easily if they're pulling too hard with the beard. So keeping the touching to a minimum is going to be good. And sometimes it's good to be there to remind them, because even though they know, it's just fun, and they just naturally want to play with the beard. And if they really start pulling on it, it can remove it, and then, you know, you'll be in a touch-up heaven, re-adhering pieces of that beard on there. As a good visual with the Pros-Aid too, is it goes on white and it dries to more of a invisible finish. So you can, aside from feeling it, I like to feel it just to make sure, because I know the level of tackiness that it should be. When it kind of starts to string away from the face a bit is when you know it's ready. But you can also visually see. If it's mostly transparent, then you know it's pretty ready to be adhered to. If it's still white though, then you would still want to wait a little bit. Let it dry and get tacky before you try to stick anything in there. Same with the spirit gum. The spirit gum will dry a little bit more translucent, but it's still going to keep some of the amber tone that it has. So that one you really want to give the feel test and make sure that you see the stringy tackiness exactly the same way before you adhere it on. The spirit gum will take a bit longer to get tacky than this Pros-Aid will. So be a little bit more patient with it. And it's a good idea too, if your actor has never had the adhesives done to them before, to do a little patch test on the inside of their elbow or on their wrist beforehand with both adhesives. I've had actors who are sensitive to one but totally fine with the other. So if they're very sensitive to the spirit gum, then you know to use the Pros-Aid. It's good to have both on hand, just in case someone does have a sensitivity to it or an allergy to it. And you'll be able to tell pretty quickly with the allergy test. You know, if the skin starts to get red and inflamed around the area that you put it in, if they start to get itchy or anything like that, then I would say use the other one. Pros-Aid is medical grade adhesive, so this one tends to be safe for everyone. I've never encountered someone who had a reaction to the Pros-Aid. But that doesn't mean that it's not out there. Now that you've got the majority of your hair laid down, we still have the lace mustache to add in, and we can certainly keep tweaking a bit, but what we're gonna do now is just sort of take our little comb, and I like to just kind of hold on and then lightly pull through. Because there's a lot of weight in here now, which is good for realism, but we want to shear it out a little bit. And you will notice as you kind of run through with your little comb, some of the hair will pull out of where you've already adhered it to, and that's okay. You'll just kind of fill in as you need to and do any finishing touches. This will pull some of the weight out for you and also help to blend some of the colors together. Again, again, just be gentle with it. Don't press too hard. Don't make it so that you're yanking everything out that you just spent all this time doing, but a little pull will remove some of the weight without it ruining your work. And once I've finished the majority of the style, what I like to do is go back and do a final layer on the top to kind of make it the beauty layer. So get the majority of the styling done, and then with really short pieces, you can go in around this top layer and really fill in and make it perfect. You can go from the underneath also, pull some of that hair out. And then remember, don't throw that hair away. You're able to use that to fill in the top. So now that we've pulled some of the weight out of here, you can go in with the scissors. Certainly you could leave it kind of scraggly and unruly like this if that's what the look calls for. But if you're trying to actually give it a style, then you want to go around and you want to, don't do straight cuts because a straight cut doesn't look appropriate, but what you want to do is kind of go in at an angle. And it'll be shorter up here and a bit longer in the front. And again, save those pieces because you can use that for your beauty layer. And when you're working with scissors, see how I have my hand covering the ear? That way you don't slip and cut the ear or hit the face or anything like that. Just be aware of where your scissors are. And this is called point cutting. So you're just cutting into like this as opposed to like that. If you go like that, then you have a strange straight line to it that doesn't really make any sense. Now you can do the straight cut when you're just removing weight, like that. So you can do the straight cut to remove a little bit of the weight, and then you can go in once you've got it to kind of the level that you want it to be at, and then do your beauty point cutting technique. You can see where some really sharp scissors come in handy here. Make sure you're grabbing the whole piece from the bottom up when you start to trim. You just don't want to forget anything underneath there. So just point cut all around, really clean it up, if the character calls for a clean beard, that is. It may not call for a clean beard. It may call for something that's pretty scraggly and something that's pretty worn and haggard. So this is also where knowing your character and having as many details as possible will come into handy. Cut these top layers going up like that. just kind of give it some layer and some varying texture. Again, you don't want to see a straight line to it, because that'll be an obvious giveaway of it being fake. You'll notice I'm catching the hair underneath too. Just reduces the amount of hair all over the place that you have to clean up. You can see it'll eventually start to take form. It takes a while because you're starting from ground zero. So it takes a while to kind of build it up. Once you've kind of got it to a place like that, what you can do is take some hairspray or sea salt spray or a combination of both. And what we're gonna do is really just kind of scrunch it a bit and push it into itself. Close your eyes. Have your actor close their eyes because you are gonna be spraying hairspray near their face, and you wanna put your hand up as a little bit of a blocker. That way it protects their face. And I like to just do a few sprays and then kind of scrunch, but also push underneath a bit. The hair tends to kind of curl in that direction a bit. So giving it that natural movement will help. This will also help to hold down and tame any big flyaways. Because remember, you don't want it to look like there's hair flying everywhere. You want it to look like it's part of the face. So using the hairspray almost as like a glue for the hair will give it a more natural appearance. Just keep manipulating it until you really get it to a point that you like. And don't forget about this bottom part. You want to make sure that that's all tucked in, and look at it from the sides too. Look at it from the side, look at it from the front, look at it from the underneath. Just make sure that it looks good from all angles. Might need to do some more trimming if you see a spot that needs a little more. You can go underneath and remove it. Lift your chin back a little bit for me. And just really clean that area up as much as you can. Tame it down a bit. Clean up the edges. Again, we don't want stray hairs running all over the place, so you want to make sure that it's nice and clean as much as you can. Once it's pretty much done with the styling, you can go ahead and remove the paper towels. Just hair all over your shirt. And then what we're going to do next is apply our lace mustache, which is a much quicker technique than what we just did.